Welcome to a very special edition of Red Reality. We have special guests with us, Mohamedou Ould Slahi and Deepa Govindarajan Driver. Mohamedou was detained in Guantanamo Bay for 14 years without ever having a charge. We just came from a screening of a movie called The Mauritarian, which depicts his story, and had a meeting earlier today in Reykjavik where he told us about his experience. And now we are here with him. Mohamedou, welcome. And Deepa, welcome. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm very happy to be in this beautiful country. Jag älskar Island. And I'm very happy to be here with my little sister Deepa, and on the invitation of my brother Ögmundar Jónassonar. And this is like a dream come true, because when I was in prison, I will come back how I was captured, how I was kidnapped. In 2010, two things happened, or three things. I won my habeas case, and I was allowed to watch controlled news, and I heard so much about Iceland. And the other thing that happened, the fourth thing actually, I'm going so to say four things, is that WikiLeaks was all over the news, and Iceland was all over the news. And it was like a dream that today I'm in Iceland. Yeah. This is so crazy. And indeed, after the horrific events of 9/11, it was in Ramadan, a couple of weeks after 9/11, I was with my mother and two police agents, mukhabarat. This is in the Arabic word for secret service. They were in plain clothes, and they came and they asked me to come with them. I was terrified, but the horror and the fear in my mother's eyes is something that I cannot explain. I remember her telling me, Mohamedou, I know why they came to get you. And I said, why? He said, because you watch television. So now talking to you, I'm doing something that my mother wouldn't imagine, that I am the television today.
We are creating television.
Not only am I corrupting myself, but I'm corrupting other people. And this is so deep from my mother, because my mother, she never went to school, but she knows the danger when the citizens are informed, when the citizens know their right, when the citizens know what's going on in the world. And I was taken away. I could not resist them, because those are the marching orders coming from the United States of America. I was identified by name, and they said that I should be kidnapped, coming from the leader of the so-called free world, the United States of America. I cannot tell you the feeling of helplessness, leaving my mother, failing her. She was very sick. And I could see my mother holding her prayer beads and shaking, and she was getting smaller and smaller and smaller until she disappeared forever.
That was the
Carl,
last time
I never got to see my mother. I never said goodbye to my mother. I never got to go with her to the hospital. I never was allowed to attend her funeral.
And in prison you were treated quite horribly, which has been revealed, but to this day the United States government has not given any apologies. They do not even recognize fully what was going on in Guantanamo. Deepa, can you tell us a little bit about what has been revealed through WikiLeaks and other means about what was going on in Guantanamo?
Thanks, Carl. And thank you to all the people who are watching, because the more we talk about these things, the more likely we are to make change. And many of you may not be aware that Guantanamo isn't a thing of the past. It is open today. 30 men are still there, and 16 have been cleared for release, some for over 5,000 days. So that's well more than you can imagine. But what is Guantanamo? Guantanamo is a site which was obtained by duress by the Americans during the Spanish Civil War. And it's a site in Cuba on the island. And it is a site over which the Americans have absolute control. And yet, because it is not in the United States of America, the Americans are using it to hide and to cover up the serious brutality and crimes that they are committing by pretending it is beyond American law. 780 Muslim men and boys as young as 14 and a half, 15, were taken there. These people were not taken after a trial in their home country. They were randomly abducted, often sold on the back of bounties, and taken to Guantanamo. If your viewers are thinking about this, imagine if America could just come to Iceland, pick Carl off the street, no Icelandic process to say he can be extradited, but using the words extraordinary rendition. Maybe somebody doesn't like Carl, they want to have his house, or America offers a bounty on his head, and they pick him up, take him to this prison, which doesn't even fall within American laws, and then hold him without trial or charge. And importantly, nobody in your family knows where you are. Often people who were taken to these prisons were taken through CIA black sites, which are undocumented sites, undocumented to the world, I mean. Mm-hmm. And within those sites, within Guantanamo, what they practiced was what they nicely termed enhanced interrogation techniques. Now, you look at that, it sounds like an administrative term. If you think maybe a little bit of questioning. But actually, the brutality that people suffered was things like hooding, sensory deprivation, shackling, tremendous beatings, hanging by your arms over your head in a technique better known as trapado, until your shoulders dislocate, having insects put upon them, being intimidated by dogs, sexual humiliation, all kinds of brutality that doesn't just dehumanize the person being brutalized, but also destroys the humanity of the people who are conducting the torture. Mm-hmm. And this is why torture is not permitted under any circumstances, not even when we are at war. But by using this term of enemy combatant, what the United States did, they applied the term enemy combatant to these people. They kidnapped them, they tortured them, and ignored and violated repeatedly international law, which offers protections to even those captured on the battlefield. So Guantanamo is an example of where humanity has failed miserably. Mm-hmm. And the fact that it is still open over 20 years after the dehumanizing war on terror, which is basically an Islamophobic war, is a shame to all of us, because when we are Iceland, UK, other states are in close collaboration, see ourselves as friends of the United States, we are willingly, our politicians are willingly turning a blind eye to or willfully being blind to the kind of brutalities that are being committed by this state. It is a rogue state, and its behavior is illegal, and we need to deal with it as such.
And that is important for Western countries. It was mentioned in the meeting earlier. Kristinn Hrafnsson said that this is a struggle for civilization itself, because if we allow this to continue, all our civil rights might be taken away eventually. They're constantly being eroded. Violence against peoples in different parts of the world from the Western world have always known this violence, but now we are at a critical juncture where we need to address this, because like we see with Palestine today, their behavior is not exactly getting better. But do you have any explanations for why Western countries don't say anything about this, or very little? Like here in Iceland, I don't think any of our government officials have stated anything about Guantanamo, for example.
Well, I think there are different reasons why people don't speak about it. Part of it is complete and utter lack of knowledge about this. For many people, especially say you are in your early 20s, the Iraq War, the war on terror are all a few years before you were born or just while you were in kindergarten. So it is not a part of your consciousness. And I'm talking about ordinary people here, but I will come back to your question about politicians. But I think there is a bigger question, which is, are we doing this because we are worried it will happen to us? Am I standing up for Mohamedou because I worry it will happen to me? And the reality is I live a very bourgeois life in London, relatively middle class, and unless I do something where I seriously confront the state, it is unlikely that something like this will happen to me on a day-to-day basis. So I think this is the view that many people have somewhere at the back of their minds, especially when they live in a so-called liberal Nordic democracy. You believe that human rights are protected and these kinds of things only happen to black and brown people elsewhere. And to a large extent, that is true. In all our societies, it is only the largely black and brown people who are being affected by these crimes. But over time, as you say, things have evolved, and slowly what is being taken as the new normal is the fact that these rights don't even exist. Mm-hmm. And sometimes we don't do it for ourselves in that we will directly be affected by this and we might be kidnapped off the streets. But we are doing it because in denying Mohamedou his rights, in denying the humanity of all those people who were taken to Guantanamo, whose mothers, brothers, sisters, children were deprived of those relationships, we are depriving ourselves of our humanity. And I think if there is a self-interest there, it is in preserving our own humanity that we do this. And also the kind of world we want to live in. Do we want to live like in an uncivilized world?
Mm-hmm. Where violence and wars and abuse are commonplace, but really that is the nature of things currently still, and mostly it has been like that. But maybe in many ways the illusion is falling away that the Western world has respected the human rights of people around the globe. That is not the case. But Mohamedou, there's something very beautiful in the way you speak about your experiences in that you told us earlier that you're not anymore angry at Americans or at America for what they did, or you feel the anger, but you manage to direct that energy in a different path.
Correct. So I just want to address what my sister Deepa said, and she's much more eloquent than I am. So why are we showing solidarity with the most vulnerable people? The German reverend, I forget his name. Yeah, say his name again, please.
Pastor Niemöller.
Yeah, Niemöller. So Niemöller said something that is so beautiful, and it is as if he's speaking today. He said when they went for the socialist, I did not defend them because I'm not a socialist. When they came for the Jews, I did not defend the Jews because I'm not a Jew. When they came for me, it was too late because there was no one to defend me. So, of course, like Deepa beautifully said, that now they're coming for minorities, for vulnerable people, because in order to establish the empire, you have always to crush, the little people who could do anything, to stay in the way of your empire, whatever empire is, Roman Empire, German Empire, and any empire, today. So American is, a lot of people see the United States of America as an empire. So, but they will come for you, just like in the Greek myth of the three oxen, and they will come for you because, maybe you are too young to remember, but I will tell you something, Carl.
Please.
Before 9/11, the police anywhere in the world, in any country that respects self, could never ask you to show them what's on your phone. But this is now a routine that anywhere in the free world, the free Western world, they can take your telephone and you have to open your phone and show them your life. This is without even committing any crime. I don't like to be defeated. And I think my defeat or your defeat, start to give in to your anger and let your anger get the better of you. I don't think that American people are evil people. I think that by and large American people, just like you and me, are by and large decent people, peace-loving people, and the government, this fascist-leaning tendency and this, pro-war everywhere. Government does not represent the American people, I got to know in the darkest of time. And I can give you an example. I remember vividly the first day that I met Sergeant Steve Wood. I was in my cell. I was very reclusive. I did not want to talk to anyone because I was so scared. I have been tortured egregiously and I was so scared all the time. And he came to me, he was like, "Hey, what's up?" I was like, "What's up?" He said, "Drink coffee." I said, "Yes." And I'm not a very big coffee drinker, as you may have seen, but I didn't want to alienate him. I told him, yeah. And he gave me coffee that tasted so bad. But I drank it, and then we sat, and then we started playing cards, and then we started to get to know each other, discussing, watching movies. He brought movies, illegally, and then we watched them, and then we became friends. But our friendship was secret. He couldn't tell anyone that he showed any empathy with me, because that was forbidden to show empathy because I'm the enemy of the state. And we became friends. And then when he came out, he started contacting my lawyers, and he wrote a letter that he wants me to be free. And he helped. After many years, I was freed, and he came to visit me. And now we are friends. We go. He came to me in Mauritania. We did events. We did events in Amsterdam, in London, in Brighton University. And we want to spread peace because I think that all human beings are equal, whether you're brown, whether you're Christian, Muslim, Jews, or with no religious affiliation. We should always be treated equally. Why I say that? I didn't say that when I was young, but when I saw the brutality of the state, because you and I, we don't have weapons, we don't have the police, we don't have CIA, we don't have FBI, we only have the rule of law. And if the government, if the United States, the most powerful country in the world, does not respect those rule of law, we are very much screwed. You and I, we are screwed. Even you living in this Western bubble, and you think, but they get to you one day if we don't all protect the most vulnerable. If we don't protect Gaza, we are failing Reykjavik. If we don't protect Gaza, we are failing New York, and we are failing Tel Aviv too. You know, because I have so many Jewish friends, you know, who are completely against the war, who completely want to live peacefully side by side by their Palestinian brother.
I think you're touching on like a core issue here, because it's the humanizing and versus the dehumanizing, like we see with the Palestinians in much of the Western media. They are very much dehumanized. They're terrorists. They're up to no good, and then you see some more gross discourse in the society. This racism taking hold, and it was the same in Guantanamo, that these soldiers and these officers and the president and so on, they actively and probably many of them thought that you know, these are the enemy. They don't deserve rights. We need to do this, and had you totally dehumanized, and in that way that enables people who would otherwise be decent to do horrible things. And this humanizing that we need to be actively doing, I think, in our personal lives and across cultural lines, this is something that didn't get weaker for you, despite the horrors you survived, but it got stronger.
Yes, absolutely, because, you know, to be honest, you know, people always react when they're personally are attacked. Very few people can see the danger before it hits them. And unfortunately, I'm not like Deepa. I'm not like Ögmundar, because Deepa and Ögmundar are defending people who cannot defend themselves. I was brutally attacked. I was tortured. My mother was threatened with rape. And I was sexually assaulted. And Deepa said something, that not only are those people who were kidnapped are the victims. I mean, they brought to me, for instance, young American soldier, female, to assault me. That is abuse, not only against you, but against the female. You know, this is so horrific, you know, to use a young female and tell her to assault someone she doesn't know. And I'm talking to you, I'm a survivor, I survived. But Gul Rahman did not survive. He died in the cold room. Daliwar did not survive. He was beaten to death. And you know, the most like saddening thing, that Daliwar was a case of mistaken identity. And I am purposely saying his name. Daliwar did not survive torture in Bagram, the same prison where I was in. Gul Rahman did not survive the cold room, because as I described in my book, they would put us in cold room with very light clothes. And this is for someone like me who grew up in the desert. It's very bad. Maybe not for someone from Iceland, but for me, it's really very bad. And we just want more people to do this kind of work that Deepa and Ögmundar and their Ögmundar Jónassonar are doing, because actually they're defending themselves. They're defending themselves because you are losing those precious rights, the freedom of speech, when you don't defend the most vulnerable. Because why is it okay to kill a child in Palestine? Why is it okay to kill a child in Afghanistan? Why is it okay to kill a child in Baghdad, in Iraq? Why? Why is this okay? What is the crime that that child did commit? And I can't really explain to anyone who is not siding with that child. And the last point I want to make, we need to know that terrorism is used as a pretext to attack and dehumanize and kill people. There is a small village in the Netherlands called Putten, and there were like 2 young men who attacked a German tank, and they injured and killed 1 German soldier. Those are people who brutally were oppressing the Dutch people. This was 43 or 44. They came and they said, we are looking for the terrorist, because anyone who stood up against the German was a terrorist. The village said, we don't know who they are. They took 640 men, children, and older people, and they took them to the concentration camp. And to this day, if you come to the Netherlands, you can come to Putten, and they have like a place for those people who were murdered by the Nazis. You know, and the Crystal Nacht, the night of broken glass. Why did this horrific attack was visited upon the Jewish population of Germany? Because there was a very young man, a teenager, who attacked a diplomat in Paris. A young Jewish man attacked a diplomat in Paris because of the crime that were committed against the Jewish people. And Germany said, everybody, every Jewish person is responsible for this terrorist attack. And if that doesn't remind you of something that is going on today, you know, I don't know how I can remind anyone from your viewers, Carl.
It disturbingly reminds of the Israel-Palestine conflict, where these people are just written off. And it's important what you're saying, that normal people, you know, when there are great powers at play, what we can hopefully trust in is the rule of law, especially if we are supposed to be living in a free world. Such abuses are not to be permitted, and we think that we have institutions that are able to protect our rights, but Deepa, this is maybe something that people in Western countries haven't been realizing sufficiently, is that the Western world has broken human rights, has killed people, been the perpetrator of and enabler of countless wars against, of course, black and brown people, because we know that if a country in Europe was being blown up in the same way, starved and genocided like we are seeing in Palestine, the whole world, the whole Western world, the so-called free world, would be up in arms.
Well, I don't disagree with the broader concept that black people in particular have been, and I am using the term black very generally to, in a very political sense, to include all kinds of minority ethnic people being wiped out. But I just want to take a step back. Firstly, I think I was thinking about your question about self-interest, and I think Mohamedou brought it up again. I think many of us are concerned, for example, about rising migration, issues around crime in our cities, issues around widening inequality, causing problems on both sides. And of course, causing problems for the vulnerable, but also causing problems for people who are wealthy, whether it is drugs or other issues. And the genesis of these problems is often the fact that, for example, we have and I see Britain and America as complicit in an illegal war in Iraq, for example, displacing millions of people, raping, murdering, torturing, millions of people, and this is well documented. Similarly, in Afghanistan, what we have done in the name of democracy and freedom and justice for women, we have killed the husbands, brothers, sisters, children of these women. And in all of this, what we are doing is, when ordinary people see this brutality, whether in our starvation in Yemen or the destruction of Syria, or the destruction of one of the most advanced countries in the African continent, Libya, under false pretexts.
At the highest human development index in all of Africa.
Yeah, indeed. And where will these people go? They will go to supposedly safe shores, and they will do anything they can to get here. And then we talk about a problem of migration. After destroying their countries, creating both physical and environmental damage that makes their homes unlivable, we then complain about them coming here. And then it puts pressure on public services, etc. Similarly, here, when we starve people or put them in situations where they cannot live reasonable lives, they become more and more dependent on the state. And if we want not to have these high costs of social care or issues of migration or asylum seeking, then we need to deal with the root of the problem, not just the consequence of the problem. And the root of that problem is largely the war machine and the links between industry and war and academia and war, and the justification for war, which is using a lot of the positive values that many of us have, whether it is protection of women or whether it is democracy or whether it is freedom, and taking those very positive ideals and weaponizing them to undermine everything that we hold sacred. And Mohamedou referred to the rule of law. And I'm afraid I'm amongst those who don't necessarily always believe that there is such a thing as the rule of law. I think the law can be created in a way where the law can be used. The law can be firstly created and manipulated to create a context where you can deem anything illegal. And then going back to your discussion about what is happening in Palestine, I think calling it an Israel-Palestine war is, to my mind, slightly better than calling it an Israel-Hamas war. But it's not a war between two states. Palestine does not have an army. Palestine does not have the kind of resources. This is a caged people. And it is what we should call it for what it is, which is an unfolding genocide. And it is clear that the ICJ has deep concerns about this, which is why there is a plausible case of genocide. And in that circumstance, our solidarity with all people has to be to work towards peace. And then coming back to your other question as to whether we would see this in the Western world, I think it has happened in many parts of the Western world to people who supposedly don't matter, using terms that don't matter. So I am not saying that it only happens far away. It's happening right now in the heart of London. We have a journalist, a world-renowned journalist, winner of many awards, member of all number of journalistic unions which have given him honorary membership, which have given him citizenship, who is being held in a maximum security prison, now coming up on April 11th for 5 years, for the crime of telling the truth, because there is nothing in WikiLeaks releases that has been contradicted. So we cannot pride ourselves that this does not happen in Western states. You're right. If you look at Bosnia, it does happen in white spaces. Mm-hmm. But I think every time we try to think, oh, it will not happen to us. It is happening to us as it is happening to everybody else. I guess that's what you were trying to say as well when you were talking about Steve and
because these ideals that the Western world has, and the so-called the free world, if you are a straight white male, you maybe enjoy and historically have enjoyed most of these rights. But the project here in the West has in many ways been that we are extending this tent of rights to minorities, to women, universal suffrage, and so on. While in the shadows, people's rights have been severely broken in the so-called second and third world. But Bush, he came in with the Patriot Act, so-called, and like with the term enhanced interrogation, these are euphemisms used to sneak in some very serious things where they fundamentally attack our civil rights. And with Julian Assange, they want to extradite him to the United States so he can be prosecuted under the Espionage Act, which is, correct me if I'm mistaken, is only supposed to apply to American citizens and should be criticized in itself. But Julian is Australian.
Well, firstly, with Julian, the situation is really interesting. It is the misuse of the process of extradition, which means that in the UK he is going through processes which do not involve a jury trial, where there is no need to prove beyond reasonable doubt or on the balance of probabilities that he committed the crime. Instead, because of the special arrangements and the treaty we have with the United States, as we have with other European countries, the expectation is that he will be extradited. And so he's fighting with one hand tied behind his back, because they don't even have to prove that he's committed a crime to the same standard that one would expect. But also just the misuse of the term espionage for public interest journalism is very worrying. The Espionage Act does not have a public interest defense. And when he is in the US, because he is a non-US citizen, the United States prosecutors have confirmed that it is likely that they will deny him rights under the First Amendment of freedom of speech. So you can neither claim public interest, nor can you claim First Amendment rights. And you are being put through a process which is likely to be held in a state, Eastern District of Virginia, where most of the people who live and work there either work for the CIA or the other intelligence agencies, or have a member of the family or close friend who does. So you cannot get a fair trial. What is more important in Julian's case is that the extraditing state plotted to assassinate the defendant. And it is very clear from evidence that this plot, it's been confirmed by 30 US government insiders and has been published by mainstream Yahoo News. The extraditing state spied on the defendant for a prolonged period of time. You can find the videos of Julian's conversations with his lawyers on YouTube. Now, that they've been uploaded, some of them. The extraditing state is trying to request a non-US citizen who has undertaken truthful journalism under the Extradition Act to punish him by putting him in a cell where he will be in an 8x6 concrete cell, pre-trial. This is not after he's convicted, but pre-trial, where he's fed through a hatch. And he will be alone in his cell 23 hours a day. And when he is moved from one cell to another, many of you who watch the movie will see there is this idea of a 3-person hold, where you are shackled, chained, and you need to have 3 guards to be able to move you from one cell to another. These are dehumanizing, degrading techniques being used on someone who is not convicted of any crime, with a view to breaking their defense. Because even conversations, once he's in the US, even conversations with his lawyers will be overseen by the FBI. Mm-hmm. But and getting him to agree some kind of plea bargain, which admits guilt when there is no guilt to be admitted.
So they want to apply this and are applying this horrible punishment to a journalist who revealed about the war crimes being committed and much more. But these war crimes are not being prosecuted, he is being prosecuted. And our leaders in the Western world are awfully quiet about it and shouldn't be. But Mohamedou, what is the significance of WikiLeaks for you? When did you first come into contact with WikiLeaks?
You know, I remember, actually, I saw the collateral murder video in prison. And I remember in horror watching those soldiers who were killing innocent human beings in cold blood and laughing as if playing a video game. And I remember, I think the last word he said over the radio, you're clear, you have no problem. And today when I think about the plight of brother Julian Assange, he's not clear, because he reported about this. But this is a pattern, unfortunately. The US government knows people who kidnapped human beings and people who tortured them and people who tortured other people, to death. And there are even, American soldiers who admitted of purposely killing children just as a sport in Iraq. But no one was held accountable. Not one single CIA agent was held accountable. Not one soldier was held accountable. But people who were held accountable are people who exposed those crimes, including Abu Ghraib. Those people who leaked or showed those photos, they were held accountable because they showed the secret of the state. I think apart from very low-level soldiers who were given slap on their wrists. So I think American people deserve better than this. But we always talk about America. How about the collusion and the collaboration of the European government and the African government who open their territory for CIA flights and CIA torture cell? How about those countries? I can tell you in my story that when I was kidnapped, we landed in Cyprus, which is a part of the European Union. And I was praying and hoping that the Cypriot, how do you call them? Cypriot soldiers or police come and take me because I was illegal in the country. I had no paper. And I know that European countries don't like African people to come to them. But look at me, I'm without paper and I'm coming through this country. But they were in bed with CIA. They were in bed with the United States of America. And I think this is a bad friend. You should always tell your friends, the mistakes when he does grave mistake like kidnapping people, torturing people. And we can change this. I think we can change this. I hope that Australia steps up and save its beautiful citizen. A young man whose life is wasted. He never killed anyone. He never maimed anyone. He never tortured anyone. He just told people about torture, about war crimes. And I think I heard someone saying that this is the biggest, conspiracy of the free world conspiring to squash everyone who dares oppose war or human rights violation.
Mm-hmm. And these same world leaders often that are responsible for doing this, for escalating this type of violence and this degradation of humanity and the rule of law, they like to point fingers and tell us that other countries are doing this and that, and some of it is true, of course, but we have a big problem here in the free world that needs to be addressed. And for example, you in Guantanamo Bay, correct me if I'm wrong, none of the guards, none of the torturers have been held accountable.
Correct. None. Zero. And they are known.
Mm-hmm.
Nor are the psychologists, Mitchell and Jessen, who designed the programs, the lawyers who made it acceptable to do this, who said it was okay and gave the advice. None of them have been held to account. In fact, many of them have been rewarded handsomely. I think there is another bigger, well, to my mind, a bigger problem that we mustn't see the West as homogeneous, as, you know, Western leaders all being bad, because to my mind there are people who are willing and subject to how we vote, able to speak. I think there is also a question of recognizing that the power now is also in the BRICS countries. For example, Brazil, Lula has come out, Latin America has come out very clearly defending Assange. Same with AMLO in Mexico. So many important world leaders, including, and surprisingly, Olaf Scholz in Germany has come out 2 days ago saying that it's time. And so have Australia. So these are all, to my mind, very, in some ways, encouraging, because many journalists' unions have now taken a very clear stance, and even some of the shameless mainstream papers have come out very clearly. Their editorials now clearly say they oppose the extradition of Assange. And I think we have to build on that and try and create greater understanding, because this has taken some time and to develop this understanding. And we have to work together with these people to create a state of consciousness where we don't accept this kind of nonsense again.
Mm-hmm. We don't accept our institutions degrading our morality, degrading our humanity being degraded. We need more Western leaders to step up. I hadn't heard about Scholz. That's good news. Mohamedou, I would like to ask you a little bit about kindness. You told us a story earlier where, when you were being humiliated and degraded, that you had an insight. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, it was like my epiphany. You know, after, when I was kidnapped, I told you about those secret police who kidnapped me. And then I was put in a prison in Mauritania. After 8 days, I was given to a Jordanian commandos, special force. And I was so terrified. I was so skinny. I was so sick. I can't explain to you the pain and the fear. You know, if any of your viewers ever experienced pain, I want them to multiply that pain by 1,000 and make it last forever. And they took me to this prison. I was blindfolded. I had ear muffs. And after 8 months in that dungeon, they came to me one day and they said I was free. And I was crying because I didn't even know. I forgot what freedom meant. And then they took me to the airport and I was waiting. And then a new team came in and they started to tear my clothes with a pair of scissors. And they stripped me naked and they put me in diaper and sweatpants. I knew I wasn't going home. And then my life, my whole life ran through my head like a tape. And in matter of seconds, I saw everything in my life. And I started to regret. And for instance, I did not regret not having money. I did not regret not having that beautiful woman I wanted. I did not regret even that I was going to die that moment. But I did regret one and only one thing. I regretted not being kind enough to the people I meet in general, like my family, my mother, you know, and my friend, or to humanity. And I wished I was kinder to them. And I took it upon myself only to be kind to everyone I meet in my life. And this is my philosophy in life, you know, to be kind to myself and to everyone I meet in my life.
Deepa and Mohamedou, thank you very much. Thank you, Mohamedou, for your beautiful soul, and Deepa for your courageous and just language and speaking. It's been an honor, and I wish you all the best. It's been very enjoyable and inspiring having you with us in Iceland.
Thank you so much for having us.